Welcome to episode 162 of the weekly Shared Security Show. And joining me this week is co-host Kevin the Wookiee Johnson.
I never know what's going to be in the middle there. I always am curious what's in the middle. I got to ask though, do you look up the episode number right before we record? Because
Yes.
Okay, good.
Don't worry. It's always in the back of my head. Like, I'm going to screw up the episode number. I'm going to say it's episode 192. Oops.
What's I need?
Sorry.
So, okay.
But I am inspired by the Wookiee behind you. Those of you watching this on YouTube, Kevin always has, it's either a sand trooper or the Wookiee.
Well, I had the Gamorrean guard there for a while.
Yes, you did. That's right.
I'm thinking about putting Vader there.
I think you should put Vader. Yeah. Switch it up a bit.
Or my Imperial Guard, or my TIE pilot, or I have a few.
Yes.
So now here's the question: since you write the show notes, are you going to spell Wookiee correctly?
Ooh, I'm gonna spell it correctly.
Good,
you can hold me to that.
Good answer. There's two E's at the end.
Two E's. That's right.
So, and very often that gets misspelled.
Yes. Just like HIPAA.
I still think my favorite thing was when I worked at Blue Cross, the team that was responsible for managing the HIPAA project got T-shirts made, polo shirts, and they had a hippo graphic.
HIPAA the hippo.
It's spelled HIPAA. Mm-hmm. It was HIPPA. And they wore those shirts for about a month before somebody realized they were misspelled.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Okay. Sorry.
All right. So 3 stories for this week. So first we have a really interesting, fascinating story from Brian Krebs, who does just fantastic reporting in our space.
Unless he's doxing people. But
I knew you were going to say something like that. I hate to bring that up because I actually really do like his stuff, but
so do I. I really like his stuff. I think he's one of the few InfoSec reporters that I think tries to take the time to get the facts right. Like that, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to knock other InfoSec reporters, but he seems to try to go that extra mile.
Yes. And I'm going crazy here by sharing my screen, but I just wanted to talk about this. And I think this is it's kind of cool. I mean, not cool for if you're a victim of credit card theft, but
for them, it sucks.
I think the technology that these criminals are now using to skim chip cards has really evolved. So what I'm showing here in the screen is the bottom of the pin pad. And what they're doing now is they're actually putting this skimming device into the card slot. So imagine yourself putting your card in the slot. This is actually the power from the device is actually powering. It's causing enough power to actually power on this device to collect your PIN and collect the data that's on your card in order to clone it. So
and they've seen skimmers like this before where it has put itself into the slot and everything else. But what it ended up doing was it made the terminal bigger because it had to have room for the battery and all this kind of stuff. And you're absolutely right. I think the phrase you used, the words you used, fascinating, is accurate, like 100% accurate here. This is one of those cases where you want to be like, man, that's awesome, and then you go, oh, but it's not.
Yeah, and like, so here is a typical point of sale pin, that you would see at really any type of store that you go to. And all the clues that we're told of, here's how you identify a skimming device, right? It's going to look strange, it's going to look odd, but this is really convincing from my perspective.
It looks exactly like the one that's there. Now, okay, total tangent, but I got to ask.
Yeah.
Does anybody else think that this pin pad encourages people to use 258 and 0 as their pin?
Yes.
Like, you can't get to the sides. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Well, and that device is really to prevent like a camera
Yeah.
from, especially like on gas pumps. They've
Yep.
been known to put overhead cameras that look down and try to record your PIN, or ATMs.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. But it's fascinating. And he actually, so one of the things that, to your point about these used to have batteries and they were bigger and they have Bluetooth to communicate to another device, like, hiding in the shrubs or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the criminal collect it later. The way that this works is they actually take another card and they write the data that's stored on that inlay to like a dummy card so they can get the data off later. So it's fascinating.
Well, and by using another card, right? Let's say this was inserted in a place where somebody's watching, there's a cashier or whatever. They put their card in, it writes the data to it. The transaction fails. And I don't know about you. I worked in retail when I was younger. I worked at Walmart, and the number of people who put a card in, have it fail to process, and then just pull a different card out. And like, that's normal behavior. So it wouldn't even look suspicious for them to get that data out.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, criminals are always evolving their techniques, their technology. I think that it's still good advice to, if you see something strange on a point of sale device or an ATM or a gas pump. I know gas pumps are, there were some stats I read that those are the most frequently targeted credit card machines because they're usually out of the way. They're not under as much surveillance as, like, say, an internal place at Home Depot where you're checking out, or Walmart.
And the people who work at a gas station, one, they're typically not well paid, so they don't have a huge financial incentive to block this. But more importantly and more relevant, they're not there. Like, you work in the gas station, you're in the little store, you're not watching the pumps. There's always parts of the pump that are not easily visible.
That's right.
For somebody to be able to do something like this.
Yeah. So crazy.
That's actually
stuff.
why I bought a Tesla, so I don't have to worry about my credit card getting skimmed. Totally the reason I did it.
Yeah. And I was thinking about mitigations for this of, like, one, I guess you could, if your card supports it, where you can tap and pay.
Yep.
Right. That's one way. You could pay cash. That's another.
I
use a credit card.
I'll be honest. I lean towards saying there isn't really a big reason to have a mitigation here. And this is what I mean.
That's fair.
You already shouldn't be using your debit card.
Right. Debit card. Absolutely.
Right.
Not.
And
yeah.
Look, if my credit card gets compromised, I call the credit card company. I'm like, not me. And I get a new card 2 or 3 days later, and I have no liability. And in my opinion, this is the type of thing that should drive the industry to fix the problem. They can change the terminals to not let this happen. They're not doing it because there's no financial reason for them to. But there needs to. That is just so.
Totally agree. And now a quick word from our sponsors. Given the state of the world that we are currently living in, your digital privacy, cybersecurity, and health is more important than ever. That's why I recommend the use of a Faraday sleeve for your laptop, smartphone, and key fob. And if you want the best Faraday products on the market, you need Silent Pocket. And because you listen to this podcast, you can take 10% off your order right now during checkout at silentpocket.com by using discount code Shared Security.
Is your team starting to show signs of fatigue from traditional security awareness compliance training, or from phishing assessments that target them for those teachable moments? As we've seen in recent news, these kinds of training are having a negative impact on corporate culture, and they're really not all that effective. So there has to be a better way. ClickArmor is the first gamified learning platform that helps build a self-defending team through engaging learning challenges and exercises. Its unique lesson templates, built with proven gamification techniques, let people learn and exercise important defensive concepts in a safe and fun environment. Whether you need to quickly deploy a training solution that gets people to stop clicking on things immediately, or you've got your own boring content that needs to be put into a more interesting user experience, ClickArmor can help. So go to clickarmor.ca accellion.com/shared security to learn how to build a self-defending team.
So let's jump to our second story, which is talking about some Mac malware, which is called Silver Sparrow.
I thought Macs were 100% immune to malware.
They don't get viruses.
There's no such thing as malware.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated how they come up with these names for, the marketing names for all the latest exploits, and Silver Sparrow sounds like it's because of the security firm that discovered it is called Red Canary.
Yeah.
I see the bird theme.
I'm going to go with that. This reminds me of my daughter just rescued a dog a few months ago. And when she rescued the dog, they said, his name is Oliver. And Brenna asked, she said, how do you know? Right? Like you told us that you found this dog on the street.
Did the dog tell you?
Right, yeah, there's 2 days. Actually, the dog did. They have a guy, I say guy, like general there. I don't know, a person whose job it is when they get a new dog, they say random names to the dog to see if the dog responds. And when the dog responds, that's its name. So,
okay,
that person probably names malware.
That's probably what happened here. Yeah?
You thought it was a tangent that wasn't related. It was related.
It is related. So Mac,
interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. So apparently around 30,000 Macs were infected.
Yeah.
Obviously targeting the newer M1 Macs, so the M1 processor, which very different for Apple, right?
Yeah.
Moving away from Intel. That could be a whole other topic in itself, but I thought this was interesting. Just something going after a specific processor and type of computer.
Well, and I'm curious, and I've not seen in the couple. I've only read a couple articles on this one, but one of the reasons they went to the M1 was to streamline across platforms. The iPhone, the iPad, the Mac, everything, software and everything else like that. So we see that 30,000 Macs got infected, right? How many iPhones got infected? How many iPads? Did it not infect those? Or, you know what I mean? Like that, I haven't seen where they've talked about the iOS devices.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, it didn't affect iOS, but I think it's because iOS is it's different than Mac OS.
I agree. What I found it interesting with this one, what was it? The JavaScript they used to execute stuff. This is where we get to. I just had this conversation yesterday with a client. We can't secure things. Like we can't say. Let me clarify that one, right? Like we can't say, "Yep, that's secure. That is solved. We fixed this problem," because all that happens is the bad people change, and Apple for the longest time was the safe choice. I hope you heard the italics and quotes there. And then once it became popular enough, it got attacked and people went after it. Apple makes this change. When they made the change, security was one of the things they talked about. And so the attackers basically thumbed their nose and said, I don't know, hold my beer. I think it's more of an awareness thing. We need to make people aware that this is a problem and that they need to think about what they're running, think about what they're installing. But that's the age-old problem anyways, right? We've proven time and again that the user is going to fall for stuff, not because they're dumb, not because they're ignorant, but because they just want things to work.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So interesting stuff. So our third story, there was news that about 100 data breaches actually of some pretty large companies, Kroger, the supermarkets, Jones Day, which is a large law firm, the Bank of New Zealand. There's all kinds of these large organizations that were breached through a 0 day or actually several 0 days that were found through this Accellion.
I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah. Accellion. We're going to say Accellion.
Yes, that's what we're going to say.
For the sake of the podcast. But this is a file transfer product. It is considered a legacy product, which actually Accellion even it's an end of life product. I think last year they said this is now end of life. You need to be moving off of this to a new solution, which is called Kiteworks. I've actually used Kiteworks in my previous job, so I'm very familiar with that. But this is a 20-year-old piece of file transfer software that used by a lot of large organizations. So it kind of brings up the conversation on this, Kevin, is about legacy software and how hard that is to remediate in a large organization. Probably one of the biggest challenges we've faced in cybersecurity over the years.
Yeah, I think that the biggest problem for me with this, the heartburn this one generates is your statement is absolutely correct. Legacy is hard. We have lots and lots of legacy systems. There's not budget for it. They do what we need them to do.
It's not broken, why fix it, right? Or
exactly,
why update it?
Right. The problem in this case, in my opinion, is much of the time when you're talking to an organization about legacy software, legacy systems, those systems are either unique or specialized, right? They're and I think talking to you, we referenced the like the $13 million MRI machine or something, right? Like that thing's legacy, but it costs $13 million, so we're not buying another one.
Nope.
This one works. This was file transfer. I have a heartburn around the idea that a technology that has been solved for 75 years, like file transfer, just switch. Like that's it, just switch. This is one of those cases where I really feel like it should not be an acceptable risk to run a public file transfer system that is end of life, because there are so many options that are either free or low cost. And I understand that there's a cost of implementation and stuff like that, but this is not a difficult problem to solve here. Now,
it could be a money problem, though.
It could be a money problem. It could also be they don't know what's on their own network. Like, we have this file transfer system that the accounting people manage and run, but IT doesn't really know about it. But that's a bigger issue. I don't know. This one bothers me because of how simple it would be to find a replacement. But it sucks. And the worst part is the number of people. One of the articles I was reading, it targeted, I don't remember which system it was, but it was one of the unemployment systems. And so everybody who was already unemployed, doesn't have a job,
terrible.
Now they're dealing with identity theft and their data being public, right? That's messed up.
Yeah, and on top of that, the data was stolen, and then ransomware, of course, was the second phase. And now it's even worse for those companies because now they have to deal with ransomware to try to get their data back. So crazy stuff. Well, I think that's all we have time for this week. So Kevin, thank you again for joining us as always. Hopefully next time we will see a new Star Wars costume behind you.
What we should do a podcast where I just walk you through the whole office and you see all of them.
That would be cool. We should plan that. That would be fun. I like that. But thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you all next week. That's all for this week's show. Be sure to follow the Shared Security Show on Twitter and Instagram for the latest news and show updates. If you like this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button, and please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast listening app. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for another episode of the Shared Security Show.